Hey guys, I'm back with a new video. This time we're going to be doing the 2024 Republican primary prediction, and I think it's pretty much possible that DeSantis really does run against Trump. Trump keeps giving pot shots at DeSantis, like in his tweets, in his speeches, over and over and over again. And from what I've seen online and from what I'm hearing from a lot of Republicans, some are really doubting Trump's ability to even beat Joe Biden in the 2024 election, especially seeing with how Democrats outperformed the polling and how the polling really missed the mark there and it was overestimating Republicans this entire time. That a lot of Republicans think the best way forward is Ron DeSantis. So let's get into 2024 Republican primary between Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis. It's becoming more and more likely as the days go by. So we start off with Iowa. Let me just get that up. Okay. I still think Trump would win here, but it would be definitely a lot closer than it would be before. Trump would only win by like 15 against DeSantis, just because he does have very good connections with Republican primary voters in the Rust Belt region, especially in Iowa. And I do think Trump would have some strength in the Great Plains state as well. So it's kind of a mix of both those types of states. But New Hampshire, I honestly think DeSantis would edge out Trump here narrowly. Polling already shows some 2024 Republican primary polling shows DeSantis ahead of Donald Trump. Now, even if it's just one poll, DeSantis is certainly going to get more and more supporters. I mean, we're already seeing it online. I genuinely think a lot of Republicans are realizing DeSantis is probably a better option than Donald Trump at this point because what the one thing the 2022 midterms showed us is that Trump is still deeply unpopular with independent voters. So that's definitely going to be a consideration for a lot of Republican voters. Now, we move on to the state of South Carolina. I still think Trump would be favored here. He'd probably win here by about, I would say 18 to 16 points. I think that's, yeah, about 16. Just because I think DeSantis would get a lot of good margins in from the Sun Belt region, but Trump would still be just about popular enough to win here. However, the state of Nevada, I honestly think DeSantis could edge out Trump here among Latinos, and it's just better Sun Belt environment for DeSantis, which he could totally win against Trump. So we're already starting a very even contest between these two. So on Super Tuesday, since DeSantis is the governor of Florida, he can set the primary date. So I think he's going to align it with Super Tuesday, give himself just enough of an advantage to score a pretty decent-sized win in Florida against Trump. DeSantis won Florida by 20 points yesterday. Or no, 2 days ago. He won it by 20 points, and Trump only won Florida by 3. So I really do think DeSantis could probably easily beat Trump in the state of Florida. We've already seen polls showing it. And at this point, I think DeSantis would beat him here in his home state. In Vermont, I do think a lot of liberal Republicans would flock towards Ron DeSantis, thus giving him an edge out over Trump. And even in Maine, I think Susan Collins Republicans, moderate Republicans, would probably rather vote for DeSantis than Trump, just because of how toxic he is among independents. Trump would still have a win in Massachusetts because it's still a very Trumpy state in terms of Republican voters. They really like Trump there. When we move down to Tennessee, I think the margins would be a bit closer, especially in the South because it's getting closer to Florida, which is DeSantis' home region advantage. DeSantis would probably crush Trump in the state of Florida. We saw David Perdue just lose in a landslide to Brian Kemp, and I do think Brian Kemp would rather have DeSantis in office than Trump, so I'd expect Brian Kemp to endorse Ron DeSantis in the state, and just because Alabama's neighboring to Georgia has similar demographics, I even expect a narrow win in Alabama for DeSantis, believe it or not, which is pretty shocking, but at this point, Trump is losing a lot of steam, and you could even see it on Fox News. Some people commented about how it might be Trump that's holding down Republicans in the 2022 midterms. However, Arkansas and Oklahoma, these are probably one of the strongest supporters of Donald Trump, so I think he would easily carry these by over 10% against anybody, even DeSantis, who's very strong for Republican primary voters. He could appeal pretty well to them. The state of Virginia, I would even expect Youngkin to endorse DeSantis, especially if they agree, I'll pick you as VP if you endorse me. That'll give a ton of momentum for DeSantis in the state of Virginia, and it might even make it as likely but I still think it would be within about a 4% victory for DeSantis. In the state of North Carolina, I think would narrowly tilt towards DeSantis in a scenario like that. That's assuming he gets endorsements from Brian Kemp and Glenn Youngkin, which at this point I think is kind of likely. Okay, so the state of Georgia. I still think Trump would have a narrow edge here. However, DeSantis is totally in contention for winning this state, especially if he focused a lot of campaigning here. He could totally win it. The state of Minnesota never really liked Trump so much, even in the 2016 primary, so I just think DeSantis would have a narrow edge here in the state of Minnesota. State of Colorado, I do think DeSantis would have a narrow edge, probably with an endorsement from Joe Dea if he appeals to his endorsement just right and portrays himself as a more moderate Republican compared to Trump. The state of Utah. It's a lot of Mormons here, and Romney is from the state, and Romney would probably endorse DeSantis. So I do think DeSantis would have a narrow victory, a likely margin victory here as well. State of California, though, I still think would back Trump, but it would be only a 4% victory for Trump in the state of California. Very close one. So Trump's winning kind of the most populous states, California and Texas, just barely. And with the delegate rules, I think there would be a lot of delegate splitting here, and DeSantis would get a good amount of delegates from both these states. Now, which states? Did I cover all the Super Tuesday ones? I think I did. Okay, let's head to the next Super Tuesday. I'm comparing the 2020 schedule that the Democrats had. Probably the same schedule for the 2024 Republican primary, or at least similar. Okay, the state of Mississippi, it's very Trumpy here. I think Trump would win here by about 8 to 9 points against DeSantis. Missouri, it's kind of where Trump's home base is, so I expect him to win here by over 10. Michigan, I still think he would narrowly edge out DeSantis here. However, some polling has shown Trump only has a single-digit lead over DeSantis in this state, which is kind of surprising, especially because it's a very populous state. North Dakota, I think Trump would have a lot of sizable base of support here. While Idaho, there's a decent amount of Mormons here. So I do think DeSantis would be able to get a victory here. And even in Washington State, believe it or not, I think DeSantis would get a victory here with more liberal Republicans. Okay. Let me think what would be the next few states. Probably Ohio, Illinois, and Arizona. So Ohio, again, this is probably Trump's best base of support, but Mike DeWine might endorse DeSantis here, which is why I'm putting it as likely. Could even go to lean if he does very well. Illinois, I still think it backs Trump. However, turnout from Chicago might benefit DeSantis greatly here, but I still think Trump pulls off a victory here. While the state of Arizona, I think it would narrowly side with DeSantis, but it could just as easily go to Trump, especially if Carrie Lake wins the Arizona governor election and she endorses Trump, which she totally would do. Okay. So next up would be Alaska and Hawaii. Alaska, I think, would be a narrow DeSantis victory because of Lisa Murkowski, possibility of endorsing him, while Hawaii would probably only go to Trump by a lean margin. All right, Kansas, Nebraska, Wyoming, Wisconsin. So Kansas, Nebraska, I think, would favor Trump by pretty decent margins. Honestly, Nebraska would probably be solid, while Kansas is likely, just because Kansas tends to be a teeny bit more liberal than Nebraska is. So I think DeSantis would benefit from getting less far-right voters in the state of Kansas, while Wyoming would heavily back Trump. We saw it in the 2020 Republican primary between Liz Cheney and the Trump-backed GOP candidate. In the state of Wisconsin, DeSantis really would need this state. And honestly, I still think would back Trump by a narrow margin, but DeSantis would definitely pick up a lot of momentum for this state. He could win it, but I think Trump would just edge him out here because of his just Rust Belt populist appeals in this state. All right, so next state would be New York. New York, it would overwhelmingly vote for Trump, and Trump would get definitely a huge boost in the next couple of states because he did extremely well in the 2016 Republican primary here, especially in Maryland and Delaware. But I think PA would be a bit closer because Republican primary polling has indicated it's only a single-digit lead for Trump in the state of PA, and I'm assuming a lot of momentum shifts towards DeSantis. Connecticut and Rhode Island would also only be lean Trump states. I could really see DeSantis maybe pulling a victory in either one of these if he gets enough endorsements from other Republicans. DC, I see pretty much backing DeSantis because I do think they probably see that Trump is pretty toxic to the party brand, especially among independent voters. Indiana and Kentucky and West Virginia, these states would be Trump's biggest batch of supporters. The Appalachia region, rural areas, very rural states, I think Trump would do amazing here and win them all by over 10. Or even 20, honestly. We could see that happen in a primary. And these last few states, I think Trump would still win New Jersey by about a likely margin, while Louisiana just by a likely margin. South Dakota, Montana. Montana will be a bit closer because it's not as super conservative as other states in the Great Plains region are. DeSantis would score out a narrow victory in New Mexico because of his Sunbelt appeal, and in Oregon as well, while Trump would probably win every single territory except for Puerto Rico, which I see is only a lean margin, because I do think DeSantis will do definitely better with Latino voters than Trump has done. So overall in this Republican primary, as of right now, looking at the map and the delegates, I mean, even if we split up the delegates, let's say Trump only wins California by like 5, and even in Texas, let's say he only wins by 5, it still looks like Trump would get a win, especially in winner-take-all Ohio, but DeSantis would have winner-take-all Florida as well. But I still think Trump would have a narrow victory over Ron DeSantis. But DeSantis, his path to winning is win Texas, win Wisconsin, Michigan, PA. If he wins all 4, he's the 2024 Republican candidate. So that's my election prediction of the Republican primary was held at this date. I think this is how the states would play out and how the race would unfold. So that's my prediction. See you guys in the next video. Like, comment, and subscribe.